It's Dr. Manny. Welcome to Asylum. Let's get it. Okay, the topic is I wrote it down because when I came up with these words, I got excited. Y'all know I'm a word geek. Um, how to spot and diffuse the triggers adding stress to your holiday season with minimal emotional shrapnel. Yeah, yeah, I used the explosion metaphor there because the trigger word was there. And yeah, anyway, geektastic. Uh, Holidays are here. And for a lot of folks, one of the things that I remember from my psychiatry residency was that as much as hey, thanks everybody for joining. Uh, I actually slid the comments out of the way so that I could super focus on what I want to communicate with you guys. But I will go back afterwards to address your questions and, if need be, contact you through direct message or whatever. But so one of the things that was salient during my psychiatry residency was that as much as the holidays were a time for joy, a lot of folks were popping off. Psych unit was busy, and I'm talking about and crisis and inpatient psych. It's What happens is the holidays are basically a set of triggers. To be perfectly honest, in a lot of cases, they're a well-engineered annual set of marketing triggers that are designed to get you to do a specific set of behaviors. The main behavior being spend, 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 argue with family, spend January 1 feeling bad about having blown all your money, make promises based off the guilt of what happened in the last few months, and try to start a better 2019. There's a better way to do this. The better way is to use the triggers to heal, essentially, to get to know yourself better, to gain some insight into some of these wounds that you still carry with you, that the everything from marketing to possible toxic family members and friends, uh, and possibly just your job and your culture are using to control, manipulate you. Now, with any behavior, specifically with addictions and compulsive behaviors, intrusive thoughts, obsessive compulsive actions, we always want to take it back to a trigger. And the reason that's important is that the trigger is the gateway to knocking you out of character. And by character, I mean the story you tell yourself every day about who you are, your narrative identity. Triggers knock you into a fight flight mode. You're working on lizard brain, which means that you're on autopilot. You're doing a bunch of things that usually, due to shame around the unconscious aspects of the behavior, the stuff, what's really going on, due to shame, guilt, and other negative emotions that we haven't resolved yet. Maybe because the injury happened young enough where we didn't have the words, or possibly in a situation where we didn't have the power and we didn't have the communication or assertiveness skills. We feel some shame towards those things. But when they come up in the present, the shame comes up directly. It's not like, ooh, this is the trigger. Ooh, I can use my adult now better developed coping skills. It's trigger, shut down, lizard brain, scripted behavior. Now, some of the scripted behavior that happens around the holidays, well, let me approach it differently. I want to make sure we talk about recognizing the triggers first. So, in the more abstract, the trigger happens, it knocks you out of integrity, out of character, and you go into autopilot. And basically, for a lot of us, we dissociate. You go into these behaviors, these compulsive behaviors and obsessive thoughts that you feel as if are going to solve certain problems, if only the problem they're going to solve is to make you feel a little less of that burn, that itch, that sense of inadequacy, that sense of frustration, the sense of not enoughness. So you go into these behaviors that may have worked in the past, probably didn't, or you wouldn't still have the wound and be triggerable. Uh, and you bring them into the future where they definitely are not working now, because, and you know they're not working now because you feel a certain shame around them. You feel a discomfort. You feel almost as if some folks feel as if they're having an out of body experience where they're watching themselves do these things. And in the moment, they feel not really good, but they feel out of control, like you can't stop. Whether it's the person who every year on New Year's Eve does the binge and ruins the relationships they spent the whole year building, or the person who cusses out a family member every Thanksgiving at the table, and that's just what they do. Possibly you're the person who every Thanksgiving you get into an argument with your significant other about having to go see in-laws. Possibly the financial arguments come up. As an entrepreneur, holidays have always been a trigger for me because it's like all year long, your goal is, well, the whole reason you're in business is to take good care of your family. And come November, you're looking at your numbers. And honestly, even businesses that are huge often don't have that much of a profit margin. And as the person who is still running the business, especially as a solopreneur, you're like, okay, how much am I going to ball out? And how much of that spending is going to be bleeding my business? How maladapted will I be in come January quarter as a result of the need to make my business look successful? And I say that specifically and deliberately because a lot of times the way these triggers work is that they knock you out of character and trap you into identity. You find yourself in this scripted prior maladaptive behavior. Now, I talked about a few of them, but I had thought of a lot more of them. And I tend to not like to script stuff. I like to have these conversations in a way where the aspects, the most salient parts of the idea that come to mind in this moment, to me, I trust that as my unconscious deciding that these are the things that need to be foreground in the moment. But I want to look at some other triggers. Now, a lot of people, especially if you've lost a loved one this year, the holidays are going to be bittersweet. If this is a year during which you got divorced and suddenly you find yourself the pattern that you had in the relationship when you were married, whether or not it was ideal, it was what you got used to. So now there's a huge amount of uncertainty, possibly arguing about where the kids are going to be, how much time they're going to spend, having to interact with your significant other in a more civil way than just ignoring them like you've been able to get away doing, or just dropping them off at the curb during visitation or whatever. These are times during which it's easy to fall into the guilt of not necessarily following the TV family protocol, because a lot of TV families will be in your face, having the perfect Christmas, having all of the traditional cultural things happening. All of these things are triggers again. Now, I began this discussion pointing out that a lot of these triggers were put in here by marketing because we are a culture that is driven by marketing. Christmas itself is the ultimate marketing period. Halloween is the ultimate season of candy, and I bet they sell a whole lot of turkey around Thanksgiving. So, the first step to noticing your triggers specifically is to observe. And by observe, I mean pull away from the judgmental aspect, the part that makes you feel ashamed. Now, this is more easily said than done. So usually what you'll end up observing the first few times is you doing the thing and it spiraling out of control, because when we first decide to come to consciousness and start to attend to our unconscious behaviors, to our triggered behaviors, it's easy to, at the time, be living in the old story. You may find that instead of stepping into your power and choosing to write your own story in the moment, that you have this rumination about whether it's family disappointment at past holidays, whether it's the argument you had that led to a divorce, the culminating argument. Let's not front like it's something that happened magically, but the argument that you're choosing to blame for a divorce. You may think back to some of, because you're sad, and when we're in a particular mood, we retrieve the emotions related to it. It may be that you pull back the sadder or guilt laden memories about your loved ones, and instead of allowing the moment, the holidays, to be a time of bringing up the joyful memories, you go from the pain and sadness of not having the person there to immediately immediately just going to an emotion of guilt, or an emotion of yeah, emotion of guilt. And then from that guilt position, you just kind of can stew there in the ruminating thoughts of wishing you had spent more time with them while they were alive, or wishing you had expressed yourself better to them. And then that can easily cascade into behaviors such as overcompensating, overspending on your living family members, spending in a way that, instead of being attentive, aware, and meaningful, and meaningfully connected to the idea that it's the thought that counts, and as such, each gift or each gesture or even each interaction and time spent should represent. It should be a gesture of exchanging, of appreciation, of love, and of gratitude of having that person in your life. Instead, it could easily disintegrate into a situation of, I think one of the common stories you'll see is where even people who are having success now get so caught up in wanting their kids to have a better holiday than they did, or wanting to make sure that people know how successful they are, that the gifts move away from their original intention of bringing us closer together to almost a competition, or what they call virtue signaling, where you want to show people that, a little bit of a holier than thou type of thing, where you're like, I gift big, therefore I'm a good Christian, or I'm a good person, or just sort of overdoing the traditions because, again, you've been triggered. Now, all of these things, even as they're happening, what you'll find is you're not experiencing the equanimity, joy, and presence that makes any moment more enjoyable and more meaningful when you look back. What you'll find is, instead, at some point, or at various staccato points, you'll notice that there's an anxiety, or you're anticipating the anxiety and the letdown of January instead of being present in the moment. Now, it's important, again, I mentioned earlier, the most important thing is observation. Within this space, you want to be paying attention to what you are doing, and then asking yourself why. What's and this is often you'll hear in the self-improvement and personal development world, connect to your why. Sure, that sounds good, abstract, and it's fun to say, but really, in each action, any action, if you don't have a reason for it, it's a purposeless action. So if you're in the store and you're out generally Christmas shopping, as you're making your purchases, you want to ask yourself, I'm purchasing this thing for this person. Why? What's the nature of our relationship? Is it that I'm trying to, is it a one-uppance type of situation? Is it a sibling rivalry? Is it trying to impress someone? Is it keeping up with the Joneses? Is it because the relationship is on the outs and you feel guilty about something else that you need to talk about instead of purchasing a gift to smooth it over? All of these things are things that create stress. And beyond, let's not use the word create. When you're not doing actions with a purpose, when the action doesn't have a why, when it doesn't have a meaning, it's automatically out of character, and it's mindless habit-based behavior. It's triggered behavior. And what happens with triggered behavior is, in the moment, it feels compulsive and it feels like a must. But as you come down from the chemical cascade that had your amygdala doing the shopping for you, you start to have this sadness, this sense of loss of autonomy, and with it comes a bit of guilt and often a bit of shame. Now, the bad thing about guilt and shame is that you're damaging your self-concept. You're decreasing your sense of autonomy. You're decreasing your sense of worth, and you've essentially robbed yourself of an opportunity for joy. Okay, so again, the key here is observation of self. Don't try to change the behavior. Just realize that the system is engineered so that every year you forget what you did last year around this time, and you promise yourself this year is going to be different. Every January 1st, we do our New Year's resolution, knowing that it lasts right about a week or two. Gyms depend on that. A lot of other companies that have memberships depend on that. Um, so instead, instead of January 1 resolutions, how about today is November 19th? How about a November 19th resolution that every day you'll check in with yourself and you'll exercise the right amount of self love so that, and I like to think of it as future self love, so that when January 1 comes around, you may not have impressed a bunch of people, but you feel better about yourself. You're going to have a great 2019. And whatever things you're going to promise yourself January 1, if you're going to promise yourself to get fit starting January 1, there's no time like the present. Really, there's no past and there's no future. There's only now, honestly. If you love you like you claim you love you, or like like the Facebook meme that you love you, then today is the day to start working on your New Year's resolution so you can give yourself the best chance of succeeding. If it's a weight loss resolution, how about we don't put on that extra 15 or whatever intended to put on? And really, let's take it further. It's not really so much about the number when we're talking about weight. It's about each time that you feel defeated by something inanimate and really strategically marketed to hijack your brain. So spend the next few months realizing that this is the annual emotional eating spike. This is the annual binge spending spike. This is the annual competition with elder spike. This is the annual the person who has been sober all year is going to have just one drink on New Year's spike. And this time it'll be different because all year they've been doing the yoga and all year they've been meditating right up until that first drink shuts off executive function because you built it up to be so powerful all year. But each of these things, and I don't mean to make light of any of these things, because these are, this is a time during which lives, marriages, and really children's lives are destroyed by the fact that we do fall under these trances. This is mass hypnosis. Generation after generation, we pass down these ideas that we're not allowed to question, honestly. Even something as simple as, you think about it, in some cases, even something as simple as calling Christmas Xmas is a trigger to some people. We're that bound to these traditions. So if something like that becomes an issue and goes deep, imagine how you feel when you have this deeply ingrained story from decades ago that is driving you to overshop or to overeat, overspend, over over contact certain people, subject yourself to toxic family members who all year long you're effectively able to avoid, ignore, and distance yourself from, knowing that every year right around Thanksgiving they have the ammo ready and they've been reading your Facebook and they fully intend to bring up something awkward. So back to the point. The point is observation without judgment. And what you're really observing is a pair of things. You're observing how you feel and the behaviors that come after it. Okay. Now, usually, here's the thing. You're not going to remember how you felt. You're going to make that up. Your conscious mind is going to make that up in retrospect. What you really want to do is you want to watch how long you're out of character. And at some point in the midst of being out of character, you want to be honest and forgiving enough to yourself so that you don't keep it going for momentum. Okay? You could be in the store and you could be in the process of buying someone something and crap, you could have bought it and you're in the car and you're feeling the regret. And in the same breath that you bought it for them, you remember that they're never impressed anyway, so you're buying it out of people pleasing. And you remember how last year they opened the gift and they made the face they always make when they're not quite impressed. The face that, you subconsciously remember every time you go into a store trying to buy them something nicer, someone who's never going to be impressed. So if you notice it then, if you notice in the parking lot that you tried again to buy them an impressive gift and you start to feel like crap, then guess what? You're still right there in the parking lot. How convenient. You still have your receipt. How convenient. They have not unwrapped the gift yet to do the thing they're going to do anyway. How convenient. How about you walk your ass back in the store and buy them something off the clearance rack? Because they're going to have the same response anyway, and you know it because they've done it every year. Okay? Now, certain things as far as the emotional eating, and I'm going to put a plug in. As you guys know, I do hypnosis. One of the hypnoses that I do is around weight loss. And anything that is anchored to your emotions, we can manage with hypnosis, because hypnosis allows us to tap into your deeper instinct, your deep beliefs, the beliefs and fears that trigger you into these states. And once we tap into that and manage that, we can give you control. Actually, I won't be there. It'll be you by yourself and your feelings. You can develop the ability to notice the emotion. And once you notice the emotion, you can observe yourself and the actions you're having, and you can put on the brakes faster. As a matter of fact, one of the powerful things about hypnosis is that it allows you to notice the emotion on an unconscious level, because what we're doing is we're tapping into your unconscious mind. By noticing it in the unconscious level, then your entire system has the ability, and we all know about suppressed memories. Suppressed memories are where you push them down, and then repressed memories are where your unconscious knows that this memory has been so painful in the past that it pushes it down automatically. Now, the power of hypnosis is that instead of suppressing or repressing the memory and the emotion that goes with it, which allows your emotional cascade, your cortisol cascade is still happening. Your amygdala is still firing. What hypnosis does is it introduces an action for choice. We give you a different action. So instead of emotional eating, you develop a habit of creating a ritual around your food where you can stay present. You could be like, oh, got that feeling on the way to the fridge. All right, let me make a game out of it. Let me shift the sense of agency. It's not that I'm going to deprive myself from that entire bowl of goodies. Let me take a smaller bowl so that I can make smaller trips. Okay? Let me, now that I notice that emotion, let me, one of the most powerful techniques is the 10-minute delay technique. Let me sit here for 10 minutes and then go get the snack. If you're watching a movie, let me return my attention to the movie and spend 10 minutes enjoying the movie, knowing that at the end of it, I will go get one small bowl. And again, check this out. I'm not telling you not to eat the goodies, because the goodies be good. And the second you tell yourself, I'm not going to eat the goodies, bullshit, it's on. It's on, because you're going to sit there and you won't even see the movie in front of you. And you're just going to be sitting there feeling the meter go up, how these goodies are the best thing in the world. That's how your unconscious works. So instead, we give what we do with hypnosis, we give you a hook. You're like, oh, here goes that feeling. Oh, wow. Look, I'm headed to the fridge. Remember, observation without judgment. This is not when you say, you go into all the, I always do this. I've already failed at my diet. Look at me. I'm so weak. This is why I deserve to be fat. Whatever negativity you have going on there, that energy is sapping your willpower. Instead, just sit and observe and rest. Okay, stay there in that equanimity and be like, okay, wow, look, I'm headed to the fridge. Am I hungry? No, I just ate. Well, something must have triggered me. Okay, and then you go to the fridge and you're like, oh yeah, I'm planning to do something different. And you go from the fridge. You go from the fridge. You might spend a few minutes standing there, just look at the bowl like, yo, that whole bowl looks like it would fit perfectly in my lap, in the dark, right there in front of the TV. And I promise I'll just eat a little bit at a time. Again, bullshit. So you're gonna get to eat as much of it as you want. Grab a smaller bowl, put a little bit in the bowl, go sit down, eat it more slowly, because it sucks to get up and interrupt the movie and everybody, and make it more awkward for yourself. Put more obstacles, get the whole family in on it and be like, hey, y'all, I'm working on this new trick to help myself with this emotional eating I've been doing. Yeah. And name it what it is. It's emotional eating. And if yours is not emotional eating, there are different emotional causes for eating. But if it's an emotional eating, then you bring the family on board. You're like, okay, ooh, y'all, I've got the urge. Okay. And then let everyone know this is not the time to guilt you and be like, well, you said you were starting your diet. That doesn't help because that triggers cortisol and shuts down your prefrontal cortex as well. So instead, it's time for the whole team to come into the fold. Uh, and everyone be like, oh yeah, which bowl are you going to use? Make it a family ritual. Have people start buying you different smaller bowls so you eat smaller portions. Have everyone know that the movie is going to get paused 4 times. 4 times you're going to inconvenience the family. Nobody's going to trip out and judge because they know what you're trying to accomplish. Okay? Now, from there, pause, go get your small bowl. I mean, if it's a small bowl, overload it. Go big. It's way better than bringing the entire bowl down and saying, hey, I brought y'all some. Why is it in your lap, right? Why are you throwing elbows when people reach to get theirs? So, small bowl, just for you. Bring it there. Watch the movie. And it's the fact that you're making a ritual out of it. It's the fact that you're adding volition. It's the fact that you're seeing yourself do these little micro steps that allow you to associate the emotion that you feel, that you're now more aware of, with a sense of empowerment. Okay? I'm going to eat hella bowls of snack, but they're going to be spaced out. And it won't be that I felt as if, ooh, the switch flicked. Once the switch is flicked, binge and then purge or whatever. It becomes more a matter of, oh, I felt that emotional trigger. I let the people who are most meaningful to me know that I'm having this emotional urge. Something is off. Your family may come to notice that when they act a certain way to you, that you're more prone to do this. Okay? You may notice that you're blaming your family for your weight, and every time they're just out there being a certain way, instead of communicating to them that you're frustrated, you do passive aggressive eating. There are so many things that emerge when you decide that you're going to find the triggers and be honest with yourself and not immediately go into the judgment that makes you feel as if someone else is inside your head running your thoughts, telling you what to do. Okay? Now, I chose to dig deeper into the weight management one because that's particularly powerful. You can do analogous things if you're a holiday drinker. Okay, it becomes a matter of shifting the shame, which is a negative emotion that shuts down your prefrontal cortex again, shifting from shame and feeling embarrassment about how you acted last year at the party when you drank, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and possibly the office parties. It goes from shifting from that shame to deciding, hey, actually there is no scarcity of alcohol. You could obliterate yourself all the time. There's a rule you put in place that you've decided that tonight is the only night of the year you drink. And if you're doing that, that's not a great rule. Okay? So if you're having that happen and you have a history of just tearing down shit obliterated, then it might very well be that you just go cold turkey and drink the sparkling seltzer that night. Okay? That's a better strategy. But nevertheless, either way, what's important to notice is the emotion in that moment. And that's what we address in hypnosis. We address that emotion that is so powerful that you don't notice it consciously, but instead you go into these pain behaviors, and later on, instead of realizing that the trigger was associated with initial pain, you start putting all your energy in solving that event-based, that other pain. That's, you're running on a treadmill. You're not getting to the root of the problem, and really you're not being honest with yourself. You're out of character and out of integrity. And during the period of time that you're doing that ritual that you do, honestly, there's a gain in there for you. There's some sort of secondary gain that it would be helpful, and it would serve you and help you regain your autonomy to start being more honest with yourself. And by honest, I don't mean judgmental, because judgment is not truth. Judgment is distortion. So it may be that it's time to, when you feel bad, take a breath, take a pause, and observe what you're doing when you feel bad. Okay? Now, as you're observing it, instead of taking energy and going into negative emotions by judging yourself, Instead, ask yourself, how long have I been doing this? When did I start doing this? Literally get all curious and introspective in that moment. And again, you don't have to stop the behavior. So I'm not spoiling your fun. I'm just asking you to think about it more deeply. So as you're doing the behavior, wonder, be curious, be like, okay, I'm not shaming myself, so I'm not shutting my brain down. Now I have all this extra brain power. I have all my resources on board. I'm actually way more powerful than I pretend to be around this trigger. So let me take a moment to look back to see when I first started giving my power away to this trigger. When did it happen? What was the context? What made me feel powerless then? If it's around food, then it becomes a question of, did you grow up in a clean your plate type of environment where whatever's on the plate, you're going to eat all of it and you transferred that behavior over to the bowl? If it's around alcohol or drug use, then it becomes a moment to be like, okay, is it that at one point in the past I felt awkward and I had a social anxiety and I felt clever and courageous when I was obliterated? Now, what you want to ask yourself in that case in the moment is, it's been X number of years. Be honest with yourself and be like, I've been maladaptive drinking for X number of years, and at one point I said I could stop when I wanted to, and I just have not wanted to. So ask yourself in that moment, the person you are and you have shown yourself that you become over all those decades of using whatever substance or doing, actually even the shopping aspect of losing control to shopping, or or rage, being addicted to rage and raging out at people, or raging out at yourself internally. Do you feel as if the behavior that happens in that space is a better behavior than what your awkward, anxious, nervous, yet learning self would have executed? Okay? Because guess what? Uh, if instead of leveraging the drink as the solution for your social engagement, you showed up at the party as your natural neurotic self, how about the people who love you kind of know you're neurotic anyway and would love your neurotic self and would have a great time with you? Okay. How about if you didn't overspend for the holidays, the people who love you and matter would know that you're becoming more effective at expressing yourself through meaningful gifts instead of signaling something that you want the world to perceive you to be. It comes down to a matter of, stop pretending. Be real and be honest with yourself and realize that the triggers, the behaviors that the triggers activate, first of all, on the other side, you end up with these negative emotions that are not very future self-loving. There's a shame, there's a guilt, and your brain is a regret minimization engine. Okay? So your brain, once you are honest with yourself about how you're feeling, instead of solving imaginary problems or self-inflicted problems that you created during this period of time that you were triggered, this period of time that you were out of character, if instead you just observe that period without the judgment, and you make a data gathering, and then you compare to an alternative, to a contra what's the word now? Counterfactual, to a counterfactual universe. If you imagine yourself doing something different, and then imagine how you would feel having done something different. Imagine how powerful you would feel, how self-aware you would feel, how you would increasingly find yourself surrounded by people who prefer the authentic you, and how you would increasingly move away from people who tend to trigger you into these maladaptive behaviors, even if moving away from them means they're still in your face because possibly they're your in-laws or their family member or a parent or a boss that you can't get away from. The opportunity is maybe you can move away psychologically. Maybe you can create these psychic boundaries that allow you to, even when you have to interact with certain people, not allow them to reach into the core and reach right into those wounds and jerk around, so that you're doing these hyper responsive, hyper reactive actually behaviors that eventually you feel bad about because you don't feel as if you're in control of your brain. Okay? This all comes down to, in the literature, we call it developing an internal locus of control and becoming intrinsically motivated. Small, tiny steps, mainly based on breathing and observation. And eventually you'll find that you develop a pride-based approach to things. The pride will drive you through different behaviors. The pride drives the weight loss. The pride drives the sobriety. The pride drives the having tough conversations with people that you love instead of yelling at them, commanding them, or guilting them to love you through obligation. Okay? There's some risk involved. And these roads are not easy roads, but guess what? The fact that they are not easy is the very reason that they're meaningful. The fact that you will look back at one point and be like, hey, it took 3 years, but I'm sober. Or it took 3 years, but I don't feel like crap January 1st anymore, means that you start to accumulate this narrative around the holidays where you can enjoy the holidays as a reminder of how far you've come. You can start to enjoy the holidays as an opportunity to show love to those who are most meaningful to you. You can start to enjoy the holidays as an opportunity to see the truth in other people when they're triggered into their maladaptive toxic states. Okay, you get to be an observer without judgment, without wounds, and without distress. All right, so I talked about all this stuff kind of fast, like it was easy to process. It's not. That's why I spent the last 3 decades studying it, right? So what I do, and I like to remind you guys, is I do authenticity and mindset coaching. I use a lot of hypnosis in my coaching because hypnosis is what has worked for me. I don't like to blame medical training because I was like this when I was at Harvard too. I've always been a bit of a neurotic, and I've always been prone to negative self-talk. And a lot of my success was driven through compulsion, and it took a while to realize that although everything outside looked successful, that it was not fulfilling, and as such, I was eating myself alive inside. The bigger stuff I built, the more I felt like those things were actually controlling me. So what I've done is, my passion is, I came up with a system, I call it CPR, and actually we're rebranding parts of it to the Asylum method, because as you guys know, I've introduced hypnotic music to it to allow you to tolerate the stress by entraining your brain. But what I also do is I provide one-on-one and soon group coaching to help you get through the holidays. So if you would like to work with me on a one-to-one basis so that we can get you through your process and make this holiday a setup to a successful 2019 instead of more of the same results you've been getting, then send me a direct message and we can set up a free discovery call where we look at what will be possible for you through a combination of my experience and skills. All right. Thanks for joining me in Asylum. Dr. Manny, I'm out.